So church, I've got the pleasure to be able to teach you and tell you about wildfire today. And so I'm going to talk to you all about wildfire that means passion. And what is passion? Passion is strength of feeling. It's when you feel something so much that it's bursting out of you. That's what passion truly is. How can we associate passion with God? Now, there are so many Christians around the world, so many people that profess to believe in God that are not passionate. They don't have strength of feeling. They've got some feeling, but there's not strength of feeling. But we believe in Freedom Church that strength of feeling, that we would be full of feeling towards our God, is the only way that we should feel towards God. And I think of how we are passionate as a church and how that fuels us in everything that we do. But one of the things as we look at the source of our passion is to remember where we came from. I remember our salvation. I remember how God picked us up from where we were. So picture this scene, being in a lake, drowning, desperately, clawing up at the surface, trying to get above the water, trying to be able to breathe again, but with all of your energy, with all of your effort, not being able to do so, giving up hope, knowing that there's no way out for you. But then a hand plunges in and pulls you out of the water and brings you onto shore where you're safe, where you're back on solid ground. Can you imagine the feeling? Going from desperation to then feeling such joy at being alive. That is our salvation. That's what Jesus has done for us. Every time I get passionate, every time I get excited about who God is, I think about what He did for me. That He thrust His hand into the water and pulled me out so that I could breathe again. And that gives me strength of feeling. That's why we get excited. That's why this passion burns within us as a church, because we remember what He did for us. Remember what He did for you and allow the passion to stir within you. Allow the feeling to strengthen within you for the love of Jesus. Part of the description of our wildfire DNA says expressing outwardly the work that God has done inwardly. And I believe so strongly that what comes out of us should start within. It should be genuine. It should be authentic. It should be from that real place. But it's got to come out of us. There's something so healthy for humanity when we express what is going on inside. Think about any relationship with a father and a son, a mother and a daughter, a child and their parent. What happens if you don't have the expression of the love that's there? It can really damage that relationship. Because if you ask the parent, they might well say that they love their son, they love their daughter. But because it's not expressed to them, there's something profound happens in the relationship. There's an insecurity that comes, there's a damage that comes, because what happens on the inside should be coming out of us. There's something so healthy. And so as we talk about wildfire, it's about living a healthy relational connection with God our Father. That we should not only love Him on the inside, but express it outwardly of who we are. Luke 10:27, it says, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind. And as you look at that verse, the common word that you see all the way through is the word all. All of our hearts, all our soul, all our strength, and all our mind. That's the way that we should love God. This is what wildfire is all about. It's about loving God with everything, not just reserving a part of ourselves for Him, but giving everything that we are to God. We know that this is the greatest commandment, that this passion, this wildfire, it should consume all. There's something so captivating about fire. If you're sat around a fire, you just find yourself drawn to looking at the fire. And it's the same with God in regards to our praise. When we love Him with all that we are, when we sing His praises, when we lift up His name, there's something that draws His eye, that pleases the heart of God when we come and worship Him. In the book of Isaiah, it says, "The people who I formed for myself to declare my praises." Praise is your purpose. When we get up to eternity, when we get to heaven, it will be full of praise. It will be full of singing, of honoring God. Can you imagine getting to eternity and there are a few people in the back that don't really like singing, so they're not singing their hearts out to God? Or can you imagine some people being there in heaven and coming to the unfathomable presence and power of Jesus and deciding that kneeling's not really for them? Can you imagine not being filled with the joy of the Lord and not leaping up? There's going to be something so powerful about worshiping and praising together because it's our purpose. And when we praise God like that on earth, we bring heaven to earth because praise is our purpose. So when we worship with wildfire, with passion, remember, you're bringing heaven to earth. Wildfire passion isn't about hype. It's not about something outside of ourselves. It's about something within. That passion that burns within. It's about worshipping the ancient way. I've heard many criticisms of our worship and our church over the years that include the way that we worship God with all that we are, thinking there's some emptiness in it or some hype. But the truth is, we worship the way that the Bible teaches us to worship. Let these verses speak for themselves. In Psalm 95 verse 6, it says, "O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker." In Psalm 100 verses 1 to 2, "Make a joyful noise to the Lord. All the earth, serve the Lord with gladness. Come into His presence with singing." In Psalm 98 verse 4, "Shout to the Lord, all the earth. Break out in praise and sing for joy." In Psalm 47 verse 1, it says, "Clap your hands, all peoples. Shout to God with loud songs of joy." And in Psalm 149 verse 3, "Let them praise His name with dancing." In Psalm 143 verse 6, "I stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land." As we hear those verses of truth from the Bible, we hear the instruction of kneeling, of singing, of dancing, of shouting, of clapping. This is the Bible written thousands of years ago, describing a scene that should be in every church, of praising God with all that we are, with a passion that pours out of our soul. One of the things that we've written into this Wildfire DNA is that we will be unapologetic. And this comes from David, King David, who worshipped the Lord with all his might. In 2 Samuel 6, we read of King David coming and celebrating the Ark of the Covenant coming back to Jerusalem. And so he's celebrating and he's dancing and he's leaping with joy. And there are some onlookers that are celebrating and feeling his joy with him, but there are others that are criticizing him. In fact, his own wife, Michal, looks on and feels angry towards David because of his passionate praise. It says in verse 16, "And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart." In verses 21 and 22, David said, "I will celebrate before the Lord, and I will become even more undignified than this." David was unapologetic. You know, you might feel like Michal, you might feel that cynicism, that negativity, that criticism sometimes when you see others worship. And there's also this David in you that wants to be free, that wants to worship God with all that you are. But you just can't seem to shake off that self-criticism. You can't shake off what other people might be thinking of you. And there's this wrestle going on inside of you. We have so many of us, this voice like Michelle and this voice like David, this voice that wants to criticize worship and this voice that is saying, I'm going to be even more undignified than this. And wildfire passion in this church is about saying, we're going to make sure that this is a house of Davids, that we're those that are going to praise God with all the strength in our bones. A fire only burns when it's fed. We've got to make sure that we're feeding our fire, because if we don't, that passion, it can be empty. So passion, true wildfire passion, it comes from reading our word. It comes from spending time with God in prayer. It comes from giving in secret when no one else can see you. That's true wildfire passion. It's not about a performance. It's not about what others always see. It's about living a life that loves God all the time, not just some of the time. It's about putting Him first, prioritizing God every day. That's how you feed the fire within you. I've got to go to Freedom locations all around the world. And one of the things that we know that we're in a Freedom Church location is that we can see the passion around us. We can see it in the praise of the people. We can see it in the way that we love one another. And it's something so definable, that wildfire that comes out and in and through our church. But also, passion isn't just about something that you can see. It's about a way of life. One of the things that Jesus taught His disciples, He said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And so passion is not just about worship. It's so much more. It's about the way that we live our lives. It's about passionately coming and pursuing obedience to Jesus in all things. That's what wildfire is about. It's being consumed by Him in all the areas of our life. That if we truly love Jesus, if we say we've got a wildfire passion, it doesn't just come out in our sound, it comes out in our obedience. It comes out in the way that we honor and love His commandments. We've seen with COVID-19, sports stadiums around the world emptying, and then sports starting to return, many of them without fans in stadiums. And I'm a big football fan and I love watching my team. And as they play, it seems empty, it seems hollow inside. Why? Because there's no fans, there's no volume, there's no passion. Passion is something that draws people. I think of where I've worshipped and I've seen others worship, and it's drawn eyes, it's drawn attention from others, and it's brought inspiration, it's brought connection that we would never have had if we hadn't have been so passionate. We've got in our imagery for wildfire, people stood before a huge fire. There are people, Freedom Church, that are looking for your fire. They're looking to you to come and burn and be a light in this world. But you can only do that if you are so passionate, if you come and love God with all that you are. And it's not just about coming and being passionate in church. It's about being passionate in your job. It's about being a passionate husband. It's about being a passionate mother. It's about being a passionate friend, so that we bring that passion into all the areas of our life. That's what wildfire is all about, to be consumed by love. And then that love to burn so brightly, it brings hope and comfort and change to the world.
God's expectation that He be first in the lives of His people has been a constant since He created us. The Bible's Old Testament is a history tracking and documenting the reality of the struggle that his people had to put him in that place of primacy, to put him first in their lives. Rather than stretching to put God in the first place where he required himself to be, too often they lowered their standard to the compromised ways of the world all around them. Compromise in faith and worship. Compromise in the call to live differently. Compromise in relationships and purity. Compromise when it came to caring for the poor and those in need and fighting for justice. Compromise in terms of lying and cheating. Compromise in putting God first. And how did God respond to this? Well, he wasn't happy. He had spelt it out so clearly. I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. You must not have any other God but me. You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. It wasn't all demands from God. God promised them if they put him first, he would lavish his unfailing love upon them for 1,000 generations. Given the choice to put God first or to do their own thing, guess what? They chose their own way. God's people chose themselves over him. They chose to worship idols, man-made objects, stuff created out of stone and metal. They desired to give themselves to the things of their flesh, their lusts and their desires, rather than giving themselves to God, putting him first. It's a good job we've come a long way since then, hey? This made God mad, and his people paid a huge price. You can read about it in the Bible. For a summary, have a look at Jeremiah chapter 44, verses 4 to 6. Stepping into the New Testament and into the new covenant that we get to enjoy, God didn't lower the bar. Quizzed by an expert on the law as to which was the greatest commandment, Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." Take note of the language that Jesus uses here. You must. The first and greatest commandment. God still wants to be first in all of our lives. For all of us who are believers, followers of Jesus, our lives are a quest to live out this singular premise, to put God into pole position, to make him first in our lives. How do we live out this command? Well, there's a short parable that Jesus told. It's had a profound impact on my life. It was turned into a story, and I always read it at Sunday school over and over. It was one of my favorites. It's a story about a wealthy merchant who has a big house and lots of money. One day he spots a wonderful white pearl for sale in a shop. He falls in love with the precious pearl, so in love that he sells everything he has to be able to obtain it, even his hat with a feather in it. The story finishes on this line. Jesus says, God is like the merchant's pearl. It costs everything to know him, but he's worth more than anything in the world. If you want to define a next step in terms of putting God first in your life, here's a question that we can all consider. What would we find hardest to give up in pursuit of him? Is it consistently giving him time each day to grow in relationship with him, reading his word and pursuing him in prayer? Perhaps it's being part of a community, of a church, coming along on a Sunday and being part of what's happening throughout the week. Maybe it's giving generously of your finances to people in need, including giving tithes and offerings into the church. Perhaps it's something different. It's laying down a view or an opinion or the desire that somehow we always have to be right. Maybe it's something else, a career, perhaps even a home. Whatever it is, would you be willing to lay it down to put God first in your life? Hang on a second. This all sounds a little bit radical, a little bit zealous to me. Sure, it's hardly a compelling sales pitch in terms of the world that we live in today, the language of the world around us today. What's in it for me? That's essentially what the people said to Jesus' teaching recorded in John 6. Rather than give the people some food or a miraculous sign, Jesus explained to them the cost of putting God first in their lives. The people responded by saying, "This is hard teaching." The Bible tells us that many of them walked away and stopped following Jesus that day. But you know what? Some remained. They said to Jesus, "Where else would we go?" They decided to show that God was first in their lives by living lives marked by sacrifice and by surrender. God is our first, so we bring Him our best. In what part of our lives do we bring it? Well, the answer to that is really simple. In every part. Whatever you do, whatever your task may be, work from the soul. That is, put in your very best effort, as something done for the Lord and not for men, knowing with all certainty that it is from the Lord, not from men, that you will receive the inheritance which is your greatest reward. It is the Lord Christ whom you actually serve. We bring the best of ourselves to our devotion time, to pursuing God, to seeking Him, building our relationship with Him. We bring our best to our marriages. We bring our best as parents and to our families and to other friendships. We bring our best in the workplace. We reflect Him into the workplace in that way. We bring the best to our neighborhoods, to our streets and into our homes. We bring the best when we feel like bringing the best, but we also bring our best when we don't. We bring our best when we have to forgive, when we have to repent, when we have to say sorry. We bring our best when we're on the mountain, but we also bring our best when we're in the valley. There's another place that we seek to bring our best. We bring our best to our church. Hang on a second, Chris. You had me until that last point. You're saying we should bring our best to church. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how we draw a line around church and how that one can somehow provoke us. I'm not talking about wearing your best. I'm not talking about behaving your best. I'm talking about bringing your best to church, making church a priority, investing your life into the mission of the church. What's that all about? Let's set aside for a moment the biblical concept of the church as the bride of Christ that He laid His life down for, that He's coming back for, and that He's entrusted into our care. And just think about some other things. It's true when it comes to the church, it doesn't pay us like our work pays us, and perhaps that's why work sometimes gets the best of us. It's also true that in church, relationships can't always be done on our terms as it is in family or in our friendships. But when it comes to church, there is a reward in devotion. Yeah, devotion. Let's say that word together. Devotion. How devoted are we to the church? All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshipped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. The book of Acts paints a beautiful, unified, generous, purposeful picture of devotion, a devotion that is inseparable from the wonders and the growth that they witnessed in the early church. This word devotion, it comes from a Greek word. It's from the Greek word proskatereo, which means to give oneself to wait upon, to be earnest towards, to persevere, to constantly be diligent towards, to attend showing great care and perseverance all the exercises, to adhere closely to. The book of Acts paints this picture of a church that is devoted, that loves Jesus above all, but is committed to one another and committed to a vision to impact the world. They're bringing all that they have to this vision. Why did they do it? What motivated them in it? God was there first, and so they brought him their best.